Congratulations, Mrs. Harrison. You're going to be working very closely with Miss Wells from now on. Claire Harrison shifted uncomfortably in the leather conference chair, her 7-month pregnant belly making it impossible to sit normally. The sterile glass conference room at CloudSync Solutions felt arctic despite the California sunshine streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. She had expected this meeting to discuss her upcoming maternity leave. Instead, her millionaire husband Bradford sat across from her with the cold professionalism of a stranger. "I'm sorry, what?" Claire's hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly. "Brad, I thought we were here to talk about my leave paperwork." Bradford Harrison, 35 years old and worth $12 million according to the latest tech industry reports, straightened his Armani tie. His angular face showed no warmth, no recognition that he was speaking to the woman who had shared his bed for 5 years, who carried his child. "There's been a change of plans, Claire. We've created a new position specifically for you. Executive Assistant to the Chief Operating Officer." He slid a manila folder across the polished conference table. "Miss Madison Wells will be assuming the COO role effective immediately." Claire's breath caught. Madison Wells, the 26-year-old junior developer with platinum blonde hair and legs that seemed to go on forever? The woman who had been working late nights with Brad for the past 6 months? Who always seemed to need his personal attention on projects? Assistant? The word came out strangled. Claire had been CloudSync's director of marketing before her pregnancy complications forced her to reduce her hours. She held an MBA from Stanford and had helped build 3 successful tech startups before meeting Brad. "Bradford, I don't understand. It's quite simple." Brad's voice carried the same tone he used with underperforming employees. "Miss Wells needs someone experienced to help her transition into her new executive role. Your marketing background makes you perfect for supporting her initiatives." The conference room door opened, and Madison Wells strutted in wearing a tight black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her makeup was flawless, her smile predatory. She took the seat at the head of the table, the position typically reserved for the CEO. "Claire, so wonderful to see you." Madison's voice dripped false sweetness. "I'm so excited to work together. I have so many ideas for how you can help me succeed in this new role." Claire felt the baby kick hard against her ribs, as if sensing her mother's distress. "Brad, can we speak privately? Anything you need to say can be said in front of Miss Wells. After all, she'll be your direct supervisor." The words hit Claire like physical blows. Her millionaire husband was demoting his pregnant wife to serve as assistant to his mistress. The calculated cruelty took her breath away. "Your duties will include managing Miss Wells' calendar, preparing her presentations, coordinating her meetings, and handling her administrative needs." Brad consulted his tablet with the efficiency of a machine. "Grace Miller from HR will provide you with the complete job description." "Administrative needs." Claire's voice barely rose above a whisper. Madison leaned forward, her green eyes glittering. "Oh, you'll be such a help, Claire. I'll need you to organize my office, schedule my appointments, maybe pick up my dry cleaning when I'm too busy with important meetings. You know, the little things that keep an executive running smoothly." The baby kicked again, harder this time. Claire pressed both hands against her belly, fighting waves of nausea that had nothing to do with pregnancy hormones. "Bradford, I need to speak with you. Alone." "I'm afraid that's not possible. Miss Wells and I have a very important presentation to prepare for the board tomorrow." Brad's fingers drummed against the table. "We'll need you to handle the research and formatting." "Of course. Miss Wells shouldn't have to worry about such mundane tasks." Claire stared at her husband, searching for any trace of the man who had proposed to her on a moonlit beach in Maui, who had cried when they first heard their baby's heartbeat. All she saw was cold calculation. "I won't do this." The words came out stronger than she felt. "I won't be degraded like this. Not by you, not by anyone." Brad's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a second folder, this one thicker and bound with a red ribbon. "I was hoping you'd be reasonable about this, Claire, but I came prepared for your dramatics." He untied the ribbon with deliberate slowness. "These are divorce papers, already filled out, just awaiting your signature." The conference room tilted. Claire gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "Divorce papers. It's quite generous, actually. You'll receive a modest settlement, enough to get you started somewhere new, somewhere away from Silicon Valley. Perhaps, away from my business and my reputation. Madison examined her perfectly manicured nails, barely suppressing a smile. There's just one small condition, Brad continued. Sign these papers, accept the assistant position, and you'll keep your health insurance through delivery. Our very expensive health insurance that covers your high-risk pregnancy and that private obstetrician you insisted on. Claire's hands moved protectively over her belly. Her pregnancy had been complicated from the start. Gestational diabetes, preeclampsia warnings, a baby measuring small for gestational age. Her medical bills already exceeded $50,000, and delivery was still 2 months away. If you refuse both the job and the divorce, well, Brad shrugged with theatrical indifference. I'll have no choice but to terminate your employment immediately. No job means no insurance. No insurance means you'll be delivering our daughter in the county hospital. If you can even afford that. The room spun. Claire felt the baby's frantic movements, as if her daughter could sense the threat to their security. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about business. Claire, and make no mistake, this is business. Brad leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. You have 48 hours to decide. Accept the assistant position and keep your insurance, or sign the divorce papers and take your settlement. Either way, you're no longer my problem after the baby arrives. Madison finally looked up from her nails. I do hope you'll choose to stay and help me. Claire, I have such big plans, and I'll need someone experienced to handle all the details. Someone who knows how to follow orders. Claire's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. Not here, not in front of them. She struggled to stand, her pregnant body awkward and unwieldy. I need time to think. Of course you do. Brad's smile was razor sharp. But don't take too long. Miss Wells starts Monday, and she'll need her assistant to be fully prepared. Claire walked toward the door on unsteady legs, her hand trailing along the wall for support. Behind her, she heard Madison's tinkling laugh and Brad's low murmur of approval. As she reached for the door handle, Brad's voice stopped her. Oh, and Claire, I'd recommend keeping this conversation private. Corporate politics can be so complicated, and rumors might affect Miss Wells' transition into her new role. We wouldn't want that, would we? Claire turned back one last time, memorizing the face of the man who had just destroyed her world with the casual efficiency of a spreadsheet calculation. Bradford Harrison, millionaire tech mogul, father of her unborn child, and now her worst enemy. No, she whispered. We wouldn't want that. She opened the door and walked out, leaving behind everything she thought she knew about love, marriage, and the man who had promised to cherish her until death do them part. Behind the closed door, Madison's laughter echoed like breaking glass. Tyler Harrison's corner office at Harrison Dynamics occupied the entire 42nd floor of the Salesforce Tower, but he barely noticed the panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. His attention was fixed on Walter Thompson, the family's longtime attorney, who sat across from his desk with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Walter, you look like someone died. Please tell me my idiot brother hasn't gotten himself arrested. Walter Thompson, 45 years old with silver hair and the grave demeanor of someone who had spent decades cleaning up after wealthy families, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. It's worse than arrest. Tyler, Bradford has been systematically looting CloudSync solutions while conducting corporate espionage through his mistress. Tyler's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Come again. I've been monitoring CloudSync's financial reports as part of the family trust oversight. 3 months ago, I noticed irregularities, unauthorized wire transfers, phantom consulting contracts, equipment purchases that don't exist in inventory. Walter opened the folder and spread documents across Tyler's glass desk. $2 million has vanished from CloudSync's accounts in the past 6 months. Jesus Christ. Tyler set down his mug and leaned forward. Does my grandmother know about this? Not yet, but there's more. Walter's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Madison Wells, the woman Bradford is having an affair with, has been stealing proprietary code from CloudSync and selling it to your competitors. Tyler's blood ran cold. Harrison Dynamics and CloudSync Solutions had carefully divided the enterprise software market to avoid direct competition. If Brad's mistress was selling CloudSync's innovations to their rivals, It could destroy both companies. How do you know this? I hired a private investigator to monitor Miss Wells' activities. She's been meeting regularly with executives from Zenith Corp and Pinnacle Systems. Our investigator photographed her exchanging USB drives for cash payments. Walter slid surveillance photos across the desk. $25,000 per transaction. Tyler studied the images. Madison Wells in expensive restaurants, sliding small packages across white tablecloths to men in expensive suits. In one photo, she was clearly counting a thick stack of hundreds. Does Brad know? That's the truly disturbing part. Yes, he knows. My sources inside Cloud Sync report that Bradford discovered the theft 6 weeks ago. Instead of stopping it, he began facilitating it. The implications hit Tyler like a freight train. He's planning to cash out, let Madison steal everything valuable, tank the company's value, then disappear with whatever liquid assets he can grab. Precisely. And there's more? Walter produced another document. Bradford has been transferring CloudSync stock to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. He's preparing to vanish. Tyler, with the money, with his mistress, and without any concern for the employees whose livelihoods depend on CloudSync. Tyler stood abruptly and walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows. 42 floors below. San Francisco bustled with afternoon traffic. Somewhere in that maze of steel and glass, his younger brother was destroying everything their family had built. What about Claire? What about their baby? Walter's silence spoke volumes. Walter. Bradford filed preliminary divorce papers last week. He's demanding that Claire sign them before the baby arrives. If she refuses, he'll terminate her employment and health insurance. Tyler's hands clenched into fists. His pregnant wife. He's threatening his pregnant wife. It gets worse. He's demoted her to serve as Madison Wells' personal assistant, effective immediately. The fury that rose in Tyler's chest was volcanic. Bradford had always been selfish, always been entitled, but this level of cruelty was beyond comprehension. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Rachel. Emergency call. Now! He hit speed dial, and Rachel answered on the first ring. Tyler, I've been monitoring Bradford's financial activities as part of my pro bono work with the Women's Business Center. Something's very wrong. Rachel Harrison was a former corporate attorney who now focused on helping women navigate business law and financial planning. Her analytical mind had saved dozens of female entrepreneurs from predatory contracts and hostile takeovers. I'm here with Walter. What did you find? Bradford has been moving money through shell companies for months. But here's the terrifying part. I think he's planning to disappear completely. New passport applications, property searches in non-extradition countries, even inquiries about private jets to South America. Walter and Tyler exchanged grim looks. Rachel, I need you to document everything. Every transaction, every suspicious activity, every piece of evidence. Already on it. Tyler, we need to move fast. I estimate Bradford has maybe 2 weeks before he implements whatever exit strategy he's planning. Tyler walked back to his desk and sank into his chair. The weight of family legacy pressed down on him. Harrison Dynamics employed 800 people. CloudSync Solutions employed 400 more. Bradford's criminal negligence could destroy 1,200 families. Walter, I need you to call my grandmother immediately. Activate whatever emergency provisions exist in the family trust. Tyler, are you sure once Dorothy gets involved, there's no going back? She'll destroy Bradford completely. Tyler thought about Claire, 7 months pregnant and being forced to serve coffee to her husband's mistress. He thought about the hundreds of employees who trusted CloudSync to provide their livelihoods. He thought about the family name his grandmother had spent 50 years building. Bradford made his choice when he decided to threaten a pregnant woman. Call Dorothy. Tell her we have a family emergency. Walter nodded and reached for his phone. And Walter, tell her to activate Protocol 7. Walter's eyebrows rose. Protocol 7 was the family's nuclear option, created by Dorothy Harrison in the 1980s after a bitter corporate raid nearly destroyed Harrison Industries. It granted Dorothy complete control over all family assets and the authority to remove any family member from all business interests. It had never been used. Tyler, Protocol 7 means, I know what it means. Bradford thinks he's a self-made millionaire who built CloudSync with his own genius. Time he learned who really owns everything. As Walter dialed Dorothy's private number, Tyler stared out at the San Francisco skyline. Somewhere out there, his brother was about to discover that stealing from family came with consequences he never imagined. The Harrison family empire was about to go to war with one of its own. Dorothy Harrison was pruning roses in her Napa Valley garden when Walter Thompson's call shattered the peaceful afternoon. At 68, she maintained the same fierce energy that had built Harrison Industries from a two-person startup in her garage to a tech empire worth over $2 billion. Mrs. Harrison, we have a family emergency. Dorothy set down her pruning shears and walked toward the sprawling stone mansion she had designed herself 40 years ago. How serious, Walter? Protocol 7 serious. Dorothy's steps faltered. In 50 years of building and protecting the Harrison business empire, Protocol 7 had never been activated. She had created it as the ultimate safeguard against family members who might threaten everything she had built. I'll be there in 2 hours. Dorothy Harrison had learned long ago that real power wasn't loud or flashy. Real power was the ability to destroy someone's entire world with a single phone call, delivered in the same tone you might use to order lunch. As her private helicopter lifted off from the Napa estate, Dorothy reflected on the empire she had built from nothing. In 1975, she and her late husband Robert had mortgaged everything to launch Harrison Industries. While other tech companies focused on hardware, Dorothy saw the future in software and data management. She had fought sexism, corporate espionage, hostile takeovers, and recession after recession. She had sacrificed everything for the family business, including relationships with her children. Her son Robert Jr. had died in a car accident at 28. Her daughter Patricia had moved to Europe and barely spoke to her. Only her grandsons Tyler and Bradford remained to carry on the Harrison legacy. Now Walter was telling her that Bradford, her youngest grandson, was destroying everything. The helicopter touched down at Harrison Dynamics' private helipad at exactly 4:30 p.m. Tyler was waiting with Walter Thompson and a woman Dorothy didn't recognize. Grandmother, Tyler kissed her cheek, but his face was grim. This is my wife Rachel. She's been investigating Bradford's financial activities. Dorothy studied Rachel Harrison with sharp blue eyes. Former corporate attorney, Tyler had said, brilliant legal mind. Good. They would need brilliant minds for what was coming. Show me everything. They moved to Tyler's private conference room, where Walter had arranged documents in neat stacks across a mahogany table that had once belonged to Dorothy's own grandmother. Bradford has stolen over $2 million from CloudSync Solutions, Walter began. He's facilitated corporate espionage through his mistress, Madison Wells, and he's threatening to leave his pregnant wife destitute unless she agrees to serve as his mistress's personal assistant. Dorothy's expression didn't change, but Tyler noticed her hands clench into fists. Madison Wells is selling CloudSync's proprietary code to competitors, Rachel added. Bradford knows about it and allows it to continue. We believe he's planning to cash out everything and disappear within the next 2 weeks. Dorothy walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the San Francisco skyline. 40 years ago, she had stood in a similar office, listening to lawyers explain how a hostile takeover could destroy Harrison Industries. She had vowed that day that no one would ever threaten her family's empire again. What about Claire? What about the baby? Tyler's jaw tightened. He's using her pregnancy as leverage. Sign the divorce papers or lose your health insurance. Accept the humiliating job or watch your baby be born in a county hospital. Dorothy turned back to face them. At 68, she looked like a suburban grandmother with silver hair and comfortable clothes. But her eyes held the cold fury of someone who had spent 50 years crushing anyone who threatened her family. Walter, I want you to activate Protocol 7 immediately. Full implementation. Walter's face went pale. Mrs. Harrison, are you absolutely certain once we implement Protocol 7, Bradford loses everything? No trust fund, no company stock, no family assets. He'll be completely cut off. He should have thought of that before he threatened a pregnant woman. Dorothy's voice could have frozen steel. What else do I need to know? Rachel spoke up. Mrs. Harrison, I've been documenting Bradford's financial crimes as part of my legal research. I believe we have enough evidence for federal charges, securities fraud, corporate espionage, racketeering. Good, file the complaints immediately. Tyler leaned forward. Grandmother, there's something else. Bradford thinks he owns CloudSync Solutions. He's been operating as if he built the company himself. Dorothy's smile was razor sharp. Time for education and family history. She walked to Tyler's desk and picked up his phone. Get me Bradford Harrison at CloudSync Solutions. Immediately. 3 minutes later, Bradford's voice came through the speakerphone. Grandmother, what a pleasant surprise. I'm afraid I'm quite busy preparing for some important presentations. Bradford, I need you to come to Harrison Dynamics immediately. We have urgent family business to discuss. I'm sorry, but that's not possible. Madison and I have meetings scheduled all afternoon. Perhaps we can arrange something next week. Dorothy's eyes glittered dangerously. Bradford, I wasn't making a request. Grandmother, I appreciate that you're used to running things, but CloudSync is my company. I make the decisions here. The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. When Dorothy spoke again, her voice carried the authority of someone who had been destroying enemies since before Bradford was born. Walter, please call security at CloudSync Solutions. Inform them that Bradford Harrison is no longer authorized to enter the building. His access card should be deactivated immediately. Bradford's voice rose an octave. What are you talking about? You can't. I can. And I am. CloudSync Solutions is held in the Harrison Family Trust. Bradford, a trust that I control absolutely. You don't own that company. You never did. You've been an employee with a generous title and no real authority. The speakerphone crackled with Bradford's panicked breathing. That's impossible. I built CloudSync from nothing. You built nothing. I provided the initial funding, the office space, the legal structure, and the business connections. Every major contract CloudSync has ever signed came through Harrison Family Relationships. Dorothy's voice grew colder with each word. You've been playing with my money, Bradford, and now playtime is over. Dorothy nodded to Walter, who began reading from a legal document. By authority of the Harrison Family Trust, established 1983 and amended 1997, I hereby activate Protocol 7. All trust assets and business interests are immediately placed under direct control of Dorothy Margaret Harrison. All family members deemed detrimental to trust interests are removed from all positions of authority and stripped of all trust benefits. Bradford's voice came through the speaker as a strangled whisper. You can't do this. It's already done. Security is waiting to escort you from the building. Your personal belongings will be delivered to your home address. Your company credit cards have been canceled. Your corporate accounts frozen. Dorothy leaned toward the speakerphone. Bradford, you threatened a pregnant woman? You stole from your own family. You betrayed every principle I raised you to uphold. You're no longer welcome in my businesses or my family. The line went dead. Tyler stared at his grandmother with a mixture of awe and terror. In less than 10 minutes, she had destroyed Bradford's entire world. What happens now? Dorothy was already walking toward the door. Now I go save CloudSync Solutions and make sure Claire and her baby are protected. Rachel, I want those federal complaints filed within the hour. Tyler, call the business press. It's time the tech world learned what happens when you cross the Harrison family. As Dorothy left the conference room, Tyler realized he had just witnessed something extraordinary. A 68-year-old woman had declared war on corporate corruption, and she was going to win. Bradford Harrison had built his empire on a foundation he never owned. Now that foundation was crumbling, and Dorothy Harrison was holding the wrecking ball. 6 weeks after the conference room ultimatum, Claire Harrison stood outside CloudSync Solutions at 7:45 in the morning, her 8.5-month pregnant belly making every movement awkward and exhausting. The baby had dropped lower in recent days, and her doctor warned that labor could begin at any time. She had chosen the assistant position over divorce papers, clinging to the health insurance that would cover her delivery and her daughter's first months of life. The decision felt like slow suicide, but it was the only choice that protected her unborn child. The CloudSync lobby buzzed with early morning activity. Software engineers clutched coffee cups and discussed code architecture. Marketing executives reviewed presentation slides on tablets. Administrative assistants sorted mail and prepared conference rooms for the day's meetings. Everyone stared at Claire. Word had spread quickly through the company's 400 employees. The CEO's pregnant wife was now working as an assistant to his young mistress. The impossible cruelty of the situation fascinated and horrified everyone in equal measure. Grace Miller, Cloud Sync's Human Resources Director, intercepted Claire at the elevator bank. At 55, Grace had seen every form of workplace dysfunction imaginable, but Bradford's treatment of his pregnant wife tested even her jaded perspective. Claire, are you absolutely sure about this? I've reviewed the employment contract Bradford prepared, and it's... Grace paused, searching for diplomatic language. It's highly unusual. Claire pressed the elevator button with trembling fingers. I need the health insurance, Grace. The baby could come any day. There might be other options. Federal pregnancy protection laws, wrongful termination suits, against my husband's company, with what money, with what time. Claire's voice cracked. My daughter needs to be born safely. Everything else is secondary. Somebody want. The elevator doors opened, and Claire stepped inside. Through the glass walls, she could see employees throughout the building watching her ascent to the executive floor. Madison Wells' new office occupied the northeast corner of the 35th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. The space had been completely redecorated in shades of white and gold, with modern furniture that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. Madison sat behind a glass desk that could have doubled as a runway, wearing a designer dress that hugged every curve of her 26-year-old body. Her platinum blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup applied by someone who clearly charged by the hour. Claire, you're late. I expected you here by 7:30. Claire checked her phone. 7:58 a.m. The contract says 8 o'clock start time. The contract says a lot of things, but I'm your supervisor now, and I need you here earlier. The executive life doesn't follow normal business hours. Madison gestured toward a smaller desk positioned in the corner, clearly intended for secretarial work. I've prepared a list of your duties for today. Claire walked carefully to the corner desk, her pregnant body requiring frequent pauses to catch her breath. The list was written on expensive letterhead in Madison's flowing script. Daily tasks for Claire Harrison. Organize Madison's calendar and reschedule conflicts. Prepare coffee and maintain beverage station. Sort and respond to non-essential emails. Research and prepare presentation materials. Coordinate lunch reservations and dinner plans. Handle personal errands as needed. Maintain office organization and cleanliness. Personal errands. Claire looked up from the list. Oh yes, I'm far too busy with strategic initiatives to handle mundane tasks. Today I need you to pick up my dry cleaning, make an appointment at my salon, and shop for a dinner outfit. Brad is taking me to a very important business dinner tonight. The casual mention of her husband's name hit Claire like a slap. Brad, not Mr. Harrison or Bradford. Brad, the name only his wife and close friends used. I'll need you to organize my presentations for the board meeting next week, Madison continued. Brad says you have experience with marketing presentations, so this should be simple for you. Claire spent the morning preparing coffee, answering emails, and researching market data for presentations that Madison would deliver to the very board Claire had once presented to as director of marketing. The humiliation was precise and calculated. At 11:30, Bradford arrived for his daily meeting with Madison. He walked past Claire's corner desk without acknowledgement, as if she were invisible furniture. Madison, darling, how are the board preparations coming? Wonderfully, Claire has been such a help with the research and formatting. You were right about her abilities. Through the glass office walls, Claire watched her husband lean over Madison's desk to review presentation slides. His hand rested on Madison's shoulder with casual intimacy. When Madison looked up at him with adoring eyes, he smiled with genuine warmth, an expression Claire hadn't seen directed at her in months. At 12:15, Madison emerged from her office holding a designer handbag and car keys. Claire, I'm going to lunch with some very important investors. I need you to run my errands while I'm out. She handed Claire a list written on pink stationery. Everything must be completed before I return at 3 o'clock. Claire studied the list. Dry cleaning pickup required driving to the Marina District. The salon appointment was in Union Square. Shopping for a dinner outfit meant visiting boutiques in Soma. In her current condition, the errands would take at least 4 hours. Madison, I don't think I can complete all of this by 3 o'clock. My doctor recommended limiting my driving time, and, Claire, I'm sure you'll find a way to manage. Brad specifically chose you for this position because of your problem-solving abilities. Madison's smile was sharp as glass. Besides, You wouldn't want me to report performance issues to human resources, would you? Claire gathered her purse and struggled to stand from the corner desk. Every movement sent shooting pains through her lower back. The baby was positioned so low that walking required an awkward waddle. The first stop was Madison's apartment building in Soma, where the doorman handed Claire 3 garment bags of expensive dry cleaning. The weight strained her already aching back, and she had to rest twice before reaching her car. At the salon in Union Square, Claire made appointments for Madison's manicure, pedicure, and hairstyling. The receptionist, a young woman with purple highlights, stared at Claire's pregnant belly with obvious concern. "Are you okay? You look like you should be sitting down." "I'm fine, just running errands for my employer." The shopping expedition proved the most humiliating. Madison had specified 3 high-end boutiques and requested outfit options for a romantic dinner. Claire spent 2 hours waddling between stores, carrying shopping bags filled with designer dresses, lingerie, and accessories that Madison would wear while dining with Claire's husband. In the third boutique, a sales associate approached with obvious concern. "Ma'am, are you sure you should be carrying those heavy bags? You look like you're due very soon." Claire set down the bags and pressed her hand against her lower back. Sharp contractions had been coming intermittently for the past hour, but she had dismissed them as false labor. "I'm just tired. Long day." "Maybe you should call someone, your husband perhaps." Claire almost laughed. "My husband is busy with important meetings." By 2:45, Claire had returned to Cloud Sink with all errands completed. She struggled through the lobby carrying shopping bags and dry cleaning, her face flushed with exhaustion and pain. Every employee in the building watched her humiliation with horrified fascination. Madison returned from lunch at 3:15, glowing with satisfaction from whatever had transpired with her investors. "Claire, perfect timing. Did you get everything on my list?" Claire nodded, unable to trust her voice. The contractions were stronger now, coming every 10 minutes with increasing intensity. "Excellent. I need you to organize these outfits so I can choose what to wear tonight. Brad is taking me to Le Bernardin, and I want to look absolutely perfect." As Claire hung expensive dresses in Madison's office closet, a sharp pain stabbed through her abdomen. She gripped the closet door frame, breathing heavily. "Claire, are you all right? You look rather pale." Before Claire could respond, she felt warm liquid running down her legs. Her water had broken, soaking through her maternity dress and pooling on Madison's expensive white carpet. "Oh my God!" Madison jumped back from her desk. "What is that? Is that... My water broke." Claire doubled over as another contraction seized her abdomen. "The baby is coming." Madison stared at the spreading stain on her pristine carpet with obvious disgust. "This is completely unacceptable. Look what you've done to my office." Claire sank to her knees on the wet carpet, overwhelmed by pain and the surreal horror of going into labor, while her husband's mistress complained about carpet stains. "I need to get to the hospital," Claire gasped. Madison grabbed her designer purse and backed toward the door. "Well, you can't drive yourself in that condition, and I absolutely cannot leave work early. I have very important calls to make." Through the glass office walls, dozens of CloudSync employees gathered to watch the spectacle. Their CEO's pregnant wife was in labor on his mistress's carpet, and no one seemed willing to help her. That's when Shane Mitchell, an investigative journalist who happened to be interviewing other tech executives in the building, stepped into the office. "Ma'am, I'm calling 911, and perhaps someone should notify your husband." Madison's eyes flashed with panic. "That's really not necessary. I'm sure Claire can handle this herself." But Shane was already dialing emergency services, his trained journalist's eye recognizing a story that would reshape Silicon Valley's understanding of corporate culture and human decency. As paramedics arrived to escort Claire to the hospital, Madison Wells stood in her ruined office, still complaining about carpet stains while her employer's pregnant wife fought to bring new life into a world that had shown her nothing but cruelty. The humiliation was complete, but it was also documented, and Shane Mitchell's camera captured every moment of Madison's heartless reaction to a woman in medical crisis. Within hours, the images would circulate throughout Silicon Valley's tight-knit community. The story of CloudSync's pregnant assistant would become a cautionary tale about power, cruelty, and the human cost of unchecked privilege. Claire Harrison delivered her daughter Emma at 3:27 a.m. at UCSF Medical Center. 8 hours after her water broke in Madison Wells' office. Emma weighed 5 pounds, 12 ounces, small but healthy, with dark hair and her mother's determined chin. Bradford never came to the hospital. While Claire held her newborn daughter and tried to process the reality of single motherhood, Shane Mitchell was in his San Francisco Chronicle office, writing the story that would destroy CloudSync Solutions and reshape Silicon Valley's understanding of corporate culture. Shane had been investigating tech industry workplace conditions for 6 months, following reports of discrimination and harassment at several major companies. But the scene he witnessed at CloudSync exceeded his worst expectations. The Fall of CloudSync When Corporate Culture Becomes Corporate Cruelty by Shane Mitchell, San Francisco Chronicle. The pregnant woman doubled over in pain on the executive office carpet while her supervisor complained about stains. The woman in labor was Claire Harrison, wife of CloudSync Solutions, CEO Bradford Harrison. Her supervisor was Madison Wells, the 26-year-old mistress who had been promoted to chief operating officer. What happened next will forever change how Silicon Valley views the intersection of power, pregnancy, and workplace abuse. Shane's article, published online at 6 a.m. and in print by 7, contained details that shocked even industry insiders accustomed to tech world excess. Anonymous CloudSync employees described months of watching their CEO's pregnant wife being systematically humiliated. She was 8 months pregnant, carrying heavy bags, fetching coffee for the woman sleeping with her husband. One software engineer told Shane, "We all knew what was happening, but no one knew how to stop it." The article included photos Shane had taken with his phone, Claire on her knees in Madison's office, emergency responders helping her to a stretcher, Madison checking her makeup in the mirror while her assistant went into labor. By 8 a.m., the story had been shared 12,000 times on social media. By noon, it was trending on Twitter under the hashtag #PregnantAtWork. By evening, it had been picked up by CNN, MSNBC, and The Washington Post. Tyler Harrison was in a breakfast meeting with potential investors when his phone started buzzing with news alerts. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway to read Shane's article. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Tyler immediately called his wife Rachel, who was at her law office preparing federal complaints against Bradford and Madison. "Rachel, have you seen the Chronicle article? I'm reading it now. Tyler, this changes everything. Public opinion is going to crucify Bradford and CloudSync. What about the federal complaints? I filed them an hour ago. Securities fraud, corporate espionage, racketeering, and now I'm adding workplace harassment and discrimination. The FBI will probably want to interview Claire once she's recovered from delivery." Tyler walked back into his meeting, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, his phone buzzed with notifications as the CloudSync story spread across social media. At CloudSync Solutions, the morning descended into chaos. Reporters gathered outside the building. Employees refused to work, instead clustering around computers to read updates and social media reactions. HR Director Grace Miller fielded angry calls from board members demanding explanations. Bradford Harrison was nowhere to be found. Madison Wells barricaded herself in her office, ignoring the gathering crowd of journalists and the constant ringing of her phone. She had expected some minor media attention, perhaps a small business journal article about workplace policies. She never anticipated becoming the symbol of corporate heartlessness. At 11 a.m., Walter Thompson arrived at CloudSync with a team of corporate attorneys and federal investigators. Dorothy Harrison had spent the morning coordinating with FBI financial crimes units, providing them with detailed documentation of Bradford's theft and Madison's espionage activities. "Where is Bradford Harrison?" Agent Jennifer Martinez, a 15-year veteran of white-collar crime investigations, asked Grace Miller. "I don't know. He hasn't been in the office since yesterday afternoon." "What about Madison Wells?" Grace pointed toward the corner office, where Madison remained hidden behind closed blinds. Agent Martinez knocked firmly on Madison's door. "Miss Wells, this is the FBI. We need to speak with you immediately." The door opened slowly, revealing Madison's tear-streaked face. Her perfect makeup had run in black streams down her cheeks. "I want a lawyer." "That's your right. But Miss Wells, I should inform you that we have evidence of your involvement in corporate espionage and securities fraud. Cooperation now might benefit you later." Madison's composure cracked completely. "It wasn't my idea. Bradford made me do it. He said it was normal business practice." Agent Martinez exchanged glances with Walter Thompson. The case against Bradford was strengthening by the hour. While federal agents searched CloudSync's offices, Tyler Harrison was implementing Dorothy's instructions to save the company and protect its employees. Harrison Dynamics immediately announced its intention to acquire CloudSync's assets and honor all employment contracts. No CloudSync employee will lose their job because of Bradford's crimes, Tyler announced in a press conference. The Harrison family stands behind the innovation and dedication of CloudSync's workforce. The tech industry's reaction was swift and decisive. Major companies canceled contracts with CloudSync, but announced new partnerships with Harrison Dynamics. Investors who had planned to fund Bradford's future ventures quietly withdrew their interest. Bradford Harrison had become a pariah overnight. Nancy Foster, Claire's best friend and former colleague, had been watching the unfolding scandal from her own tech startup office. She immediately drove to UCSF Medical Center to check on Claire and baby Emma. "Claire, honey, are you okay? I saw the news." Claire was nursing Emma when Nancy arrived, her face exhausted but peaceful for the first time in months. "I'm better than I've been in a long time, actually. It sounds strange, but going into labor on Madison's carpet was almost liberating. I realized I don't have to pretend anymore that Bradford is a good person." Nancy sat in the visitor chair, studying her friend's face. "Claire, there's something I need to tell you. I've been working with Dorothy Harrison for the past month, documenting Bradford's behavior for legal purposes." Claire's eyebrows rose. Dorothy, Brad's grandmother. "She contacted me after Tyler told her what was happening. She's been building a case against Bradford and Madison. The FBI is involved now. This is much bigger than workplace harassment." Claire adjusted Emma in her arms, processing this information. "What kind of case? Securities fraud? Corporate espionage? Theft of family assets? Bradford could go to prison for 10 to 15 years. For the first time in months, Claire smiled genuinely. "Good." Nancy pulled out her laptop. "Claire, I need to show you something. Dorothy Harrison wants to meet with you. She has a proposal that might change everything." On the laptop screen was an email from Dorothy Harrison, offering Claire full legal representation, financial support, and most importantly, justice. "She wants to help me. She wants to destroy Bradford, and she wants to make sure you and Emma never have to worry about money again." Claire looked down at her sleeping daughter, then back at Nancy's laptop screen. For 9 months, she had felt powerless against Bradford's manipulation and cruelty. Now, for the first time, she realized she wasn't fighting alone. The Harrison family matriarch was preparing to go to war for her great-granddaughter and the woman who had been brave enough to protect her. Bradford Harrison was about to learn that threatening a pregnant woman had consequences that reached far beyond his imagination. Dorothy Harrison arrived at CloudSync Solutions at precisely 9 a.m. in a Blacktown car, accompanied by Walter Thompson and a team of corporate attorneys that looked like they were prepared to storm the beaches of Normandy. At 68, she moved with the purposeful stride of someone who had been conquering business enemies since before most CloudSync employees were born. The lobby fell silent as Dorothy's entourage swept through, heading directly to the executive elevator bank. FBI agents nodded respectfully as she passed. Even federal investigators understood that Dorothy Harrison commanded a different level of authority in Silicon Valley. Bradford's corner office had been sealed by federal agents, so Dorothy established her command center in the main conference room. Within minutes, she had summoned every department head, board member, and senior executive for an emergency meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dorothy began, her voice carrying the weight of 50 years in tech leadership, "CloudSync Solutions has been systematically looted by Bradford Harrison and his accomplice, Madison Wells. As of today, I am assuming direct control of this company under the authority of the Harrison Family Trust." Grace Miller from HR raised her hand tentatively. "Mrs. Harrison, what does this mean for our employees? Every job is secure. Every contract will be honored. Every project will continue without interruption." Dorothy's gaze swept the room. "What will not continue is the culture of cruelty and criminal behavior that Bradford encouraged." Walter Thompson stepped forward with a stack of legal documents. "Effective immediately, Bradford Harrison is terminated from all positions and banned from these premises. Madison Wells is similarly terminated and will face federal charges for corporate espionage." A junior developer near the back of the room spoke up. "What about our stock options? Our retirement plans?" Dorothy's expression softened slightly. Your benefits are protected and will actually improve under new management. This company employs 400 talented individuals who deserve better leadership than they receive from my grandson. As if summoned by their conversation, Bradford Harrison burst through the conference room doors, flanked by two expensive attorneys and radiating desperate fury. This is illegal. You can't just steal my company. Dorothy turned to face her youngest grandson with the cold patience of a glacier. Bradford, you're trespassing. Security is prepared to escort you from the building. I built CloudSync from nothing. This is my company, my vision, my success. Your vision. Dorothy's voice could have frozen liquid nitrogen. Let me educate you about your vision. Bradford. The initial funding came from the Harrison Family Trust. The office lease is in the trust's name. The major contracts were secured through Harrison family relationships. Even your salary was paid from trust accounts. Bradford's face flushed red. That's not true. Walter Thompson consulted his legal documents. CloudSync Solutions is wholly owned by Harrison Family Trust. Established 1983, amended 1997, Bradford Harrison was granted operational authority as a family member in good standing. That authority is revoked as of today. You can't do this, Bradford's voice cracked with panic. I have investors, I have deals in progress. You have federal charges pending, Dorothy replied calmly. Securities fraud, corporate espionage, theft of corporate assets. Would you like me to continue? Bradford's attorneys exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. Mrs. Harrison, my client disputes these allegations. We demand evidence of any wrongdoing. Dorothy nodded to Agent Martinez, who had been observing from the corner of the room. We have video surveillance of Madison Wells exchanging USB drives containing proprietary code for cash payments, Agent Martinez said. We have bank records showing unauthorized transfers from CloudSync accounts to Bradford Harrison's personal accounts. We have documented evidence of workplace harassment and discrimination. Bradford's second attorney, a younger woman who looked increasingly uncomfortable, whispered urgently in Bradford's ear. Furthermore, Agent Martinez continued, we have recordings. The room went dead silent. What recordings? Bradford's voice was barely a whisper. Madison Wells, who had been conspicuously absent from the meeting, suddenly appeared in the doorway. Her perfect makeup was gone, replaced by the haggard appearance of someone who hadn't slept in days. Tell them about the recordings, Madison, Agent Martinez said. Madison stepped into the conference room like a condemned prisoner approaching the gallows. I recorded our conversations. Bradford, all of them. Every meeting, every phone call, every time you told me to steal code or transfer money. Bradford's face went white. You what? I needed insurance. I knew this would all fall apart eventually, and I needed protection. Madison's voice shook with exhaustion and fear. I have recordings of you instructing me to steal proprietary algorithms. I have recordings of you planning to tank CloudSync's value so you could buy it back cheap. I have recordings of you laughing about forcing Claire to serve me coffee. The last revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Even Bradford's attorneys looked disgusted. Dorothy leaned forward in her chair. Play the recording about Claire. Agent Martinez consulted her tablet and pressed play. Bradford's voice filled the conference room with crystal clarity. The best part is watching her waddle around 8 months pregnant, fetching coffee for you. The humiliation is perfect. She thinks she's protecting her precious baby, but she's just destroying her own dignity. By the time the kid arrives, she'll be so broken down that signing divorce papers will seem like mercy. Madison's recorded laughter followed, bright and cruel. The silence that followed was deafening. Several CloudSync employees stood and walked out of the room in disgust. Bradford's first attorney grabbed his briefcase. We're withdrawing from this case immediately. His second attorney followed suit. Mr. Harrison, you'll need new representation. Bradford stood alone in the conference room, abandoned by his lawyers, his mistress, and his family. Dorothy Harrison studied him with the detached interest of a scientist examining a particularly unpleasant specimen. Bradford, you are no longer my grandson. You are no longer a Harrison. You are no longer welcome in my businesses, my home, or my family. Bradford's desperate fury crumbled into panic. Grandmother, please, I made mistakes. But I can fix this. I can make it right. Mistakes are math errors. Bradford, this is malice. Dorothy stood and gathered her papers. Walter, please ensure Mr. Harrison is escorted from the premises. Security should be prepared for him to become violent. As if on cue, Bradford lunged toward Dorothy, his face twisted with rage. You can't destroy me. I won't let you, security guards materialized instantly, restraining Bradford as he struggled and shouted threats. His transformation from polished tech executive to screaming criminal was complete and horrifying. Agent Martinez, Dorothy said calmly as Bradford was dragged from the room. I believe you have sufficient evidence for arrest. More than sufficient. We'll be filing formal charges within the hour. Dorothy walked to the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows and gazed out at the San Francisco skyline. Somewhere in that maze of steel and glass was her great-granddaughter Emma, and Claire, the young woman who had shown more courage in 9 months than Bradford had displayed in his entire life. Walter, I want you to contact Claire immediately. Offer her full legal representation, financial support, and whatever she needs for her daughter's future. What about Cloud Sync? Dorothy smiled for the first time in days. Cloud Sync will become the most family-friendly tech company in Silicon Valley. We're going to prove that treating employees with dignity isn't just morally right, it's profitable. As federal agents placed Bradford Harrison in handcuffs and read him his rights, Dorothy Harrison was already planning the next chapter of the Harrison business empire, an empire that would be built on justice, family loyalty, and the understanding that real power came from protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. Bradford had learned too late that his grandmother hadn't built a $2 billion empire by being gentle with those who threatened her family. Shane Mitchell's original article about CloudSync's corporate culture had exploded into a national conversation about workplace harassment, corporate abuse, and the treatment of pregnant women in Silicon Valley. Within 72 hours of publication, his story had been shared over 2 million times and spawned dozens of follow-up investigations. Pregnant and powerless. The Claire Harrison story sparks nationwide outrage. Follow-up reporting by Shane Mitchell. 3 days after delivering her daughter Emma in a hospital room while her millionaire husband celebrated with his mistress, Claire Harrison has become an unlikely symbol of resilience in the face of corporate cruelty. The recordings released by federal investigators reveal a level of calculated abuse that has shocked even Silicon Valley insiders accustomed to cutthroat business practices. Shane's follow-up articles triggered congressional hearings on pregnancy discrimination in the workplace. Representative Sarah Chen from California announced plans for federal legislation protecting pregnant employees from workplace retaliation. What happened to Claire Harrison could happen to any working mother in America, Representative Chen said in a televised press conference. We need federal protections with real teeth, not just empty promises. The tech industry's response was swift and decisive. Major companies rushed to announce enhanced maternity benefits and anti-discrimination policies. Google, Apple, and Microsoft all released statements distancing themselves from CloudSync's practices and pledging stronger protections for pregnant employees. CloudSync's stock price, already volatile due to the federal investigation, collapsed completely. The company that Bradford had built his identity around was now worth less than its office furniture. At UCSF Medical Center, Claire Harrison was recovering from delivery while processing the media attention that had transformed her private nightmare into a public cause. Baby Emma slept peacefully in her arms, oblivious to the chaos her birth had triggered. Nancy Foster arrived with coffee and a stack of newspapers, her face grim with concern. Claire, you need to see this. The story is everywhere. The newspapers painted Claire as either a martyred saint or a naive victim, depending on their editorial perspective. The San Francisco Chronicle portrayed her as a courageous mother protecting her unborn child. The Wall Street Journal questioned why she hadn't fought back sooner. The New York Times focused on the broader implications for women in tech. How do you feel about becoming the face of workplace pregnancy discrimination? Nancy asked gently. Claire adjusted Emma in her arms, considering the question. Honestly terrified. I never wanted to be a public figure. I just wanted to have my baby safely. Dorothy Harrison wants to meet with you today. She's been coordinating your legal defense and media strategy. As if summoned by her name, Dorothy Harrison knocked softly on the hospital room door. At 68, she moved with the careful dignity of someone accustomed to commanding respect in any room. Claire, My dear, may I come in? Claire nodded, suddenly nervous about meeting the woman who had built the Harrison tech empire and destroyed Bradford's career in a single morning. Dorothy approached the hospital bed and gazed down at baby Emma with genuine warmth. She's beautiful. May I? Claire carefully transferred Emma to Dorothy's experienced arms. The tech matriarch held her great-granddaughter with the confident ease of someone who had raised children while building a business empire. Claire, I owe you an apology. I failed to protect you from Bradford's cruelty. That ends today. Mrs. Harrison, you don't owe me anything. You've already done more than... I've done the minimum required to address a family emergency. Now I want to do what's right. Dorothy settled into the visitor chair, still holding Emma. I'm offering you full legal representation in your divorce proceedings. Bradford will contest everything, but my attorneys are very good at their jobs. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I can't afford lawyers who could compete with Bradford's resources. You're not paying for them. I am. Bradford stole from the family trust, which means he stole from Emma's inheritance. I consider this a family matter. Nancy leaned forward. Claire, there's more. Tell her about the foundation idea. Dorothy's eyes lit up. I've been thinking about CloudSync's future. The company needs new leadership and a new mission. I'd like you to consider taking a role in management. Management. Claire's voice rose an octave. Mrs. Harrison, I was just demoted to fetching coffee. I'm not qualified to... You're qualified to understand what working mothers need from their employers. You're qualified to recognize harassment and prevent it. Most importantly, you're qualified to ensure that no other woman endures what you've experienced. Dorothy adjusted Emma in her arms as the baby stirred. I want to create the Claire Harrison Foundation for Workplace Equity, funded by CloudSync's profits and focused on supporting pregnant women facing employment discrimination. Claire stared at Dorothy in shock. You want to name a foundation after me? You've become a symbol whether you wanted to or not. We can use that symbolism to help other women facing similar situations. A soft knock on the door interrupted their conversation. A nurse entered with a large floral arrangement and a concerned expression. Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are reporters in the lobby asking to interview you. Security is keeping them out, but they're persistent. Through the hospital room window, Claire could see news vans lined up on the street below. Her transformation from private citizen to public figure was complete and irreversible. What do I tell them? Claire asked Dorothy. Nothing. For now, Walter Thompson is coordinating all media communications. Your job is to recover and bond with your daughter. The world can wait, but the world wouldn't wait. By evening, Claire's story had been featured on every major news network. CNN's legal analyst called it the most egregious case of pregnancy discrimination in corporate America. MSNBC's business reporter described Bradford's behavior as a masterclass in how not to treat employees. Fox News, predictably, questioned why Claire hadn't simply quit her job, prompting immediate backlash from women's rights organizations. At federal detention facility in Oakland, Bradford Harrison watched the news coverage from his cell with growing panic. His criminal defense attorney, a public defender named Marcus Webb, had explained the severity of the charges against him. 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts, Marcus had said bluntly. Securities fraud, corporate espionage, racketeering, the recordings Madison provided are devastating. Bradford's request for bail had been denied due to flight risk. Federal investigators had discovered his researches into non-extradition countries and attempted passport applications under false names. Madison Wells, facing her own criminal charges, had been released on bail after agreeing to testify for the prosecution. Her cooperation was complete and damaging. She had provided recordings, financial documents, and detailed testimony about Bradford's criminal enterprises. In her own apartment, Madison watched the news coverage with growing horror. She had become the most hated woman in Silicon Valley, the symbol of corporate callousness who complained about carpet stains while a pregnant woman went into labor. Her social media accounts were flooded with death threats. Her family had stopped taking her calls. Even her attorney seemed disgusted by her actions. The tech industry's response was swift and permanent. Madison Wells would never work in Silicon Valley again. At Harrison Dynamics, Tyler Harrison was coordinating the acquisition of CloudSync's assets and employees. Within a week, every CloudSync worker had been offered positions at Harrison Dynamics with improved benefits and family-friendly policies. "We're not just acquiring a company," Tyler announced in a press conference. "We're making a statement about Silicon Valley's values and priorities." The transformation was remarkable. CloudSync's toxic culture was replaced overnight with policies that prioritized employee well-being, family support, and ethical business practices. Shane Mitchell's investigative reporting had earned him a Pulitzer Prize nomination in job offers from every major news organization in the country. But he remained focused on the human story at the center of the corporate scandal. Claire Harrison didn't choose to become a symbol, he wrote in his final article about the case, but her courage in protecting her unborn daughter while enduring systematic humiliation has reminded Silicon Valley that real innovation comes from treating people with dignity, not from exploiting their vulnerabilities. As federal prosecutors prepared their case against Bradford Harrison and Madison Wells, Claire Harrison was planning her future as a mother, a foundation leader, and accidentally, a voice for working mothers everywhere. The woman who had been forced to fetch coffee for her husband's mistress was about to become one of the most powerful advocates for workplace equity in American history. The federal courthouse in San Francisco buzzed with media activity as Bradford Harrison's trial entered its second week. Protesters lined the courthouse steps holding signs reading, "Justice for Claire" and "Protect Pregnant Workers." The case had become a symbol of corporate accountability and women's rights in the workplace. Tyler Harrison sat in the gallery's front row, watching his younger brother face the consequences of choices that had destroyed their family name and betrayed everything their grandmother had built. Bradford, dressed in an orange jumpsuit and shackled at the ankles, looked nothing like the polished tech executive who had once commanded boardrooms and million-dollar deals. During a recess, Tyler was approached by Marcus Webb, Bradford's public defender. "Mr. Harrison, your brother would like to speak with you, privately." Tyler followed Marcus to a small conference room where Bradford waited under guard supervision. The brothers hadn't spoken since Dorothy's takeover of CloudSync 3 months earlier. Bradford looked up as Tyler entered, his face gaunt from stress and institutional food. "Tyler, thank God you came. I wasn't sure you would." Tyler took the seat across from his brother, but didn't speak. "I know you're angry, but we need to talk. We're family. We're brothers. That has to mean something." "Family." Tyler's voice was cold as Arctic wind. "You threatened your pregnant wife. You stole from our grandmother. You destroyed everything our family built. What part of that sounds like family to you?" Bradford leaned forward desperately. "I made mistakes. Tyler, I know that, but I was under tremendous pressure. The tech industry is brutal. Competition is cutthroat. I did what I thought I had to do to survive." "You didn't have to force Claire to serve coffee to your mistress." Bradford's face flushed. "That was Madison's idea. She manipulated me. Tyler, she seduced me and then used me to steal company secrets. I was a victim too." Tyler stared at his brother with disgust. "Even now, facing federal prison, you can't take responsibility for your actions." "I can take responsibility. That's why I asked you here. I want to make this right. I want to apologize to Claire, to the family, to everyone I hurt." "Your apologies are worthless. Bradford, Claire went into labor on your mistress's carpet while you planned romantic dinners. Our grandmother had to activate emergency protocols to stop you from looting the family trust. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." Bradford's desperate composure cracked. "You don't understand. I built CloudSync from nothing. I was successful. I was respected. Grandmother took that away from me. Grandmother gave you everything you had, and you threw it away for a 26-year-old gold digger who was stealing from you." "Madison loved me." Tyler laughed bitterly. "Madison loved your money and your access to proprietary technology. The moment federal agents arrested you, she started negotiating immunity deals." The truth of Tyler's words hit Bradford like physical blows. Madison had visited him exactly once since his arrest, and only to inform him that she was cooperating fully with prosecutors. "What do you want me to say?" "Tyler, that I'm sorry, that I regret everything." "Fine, I'm sorry, I regret everything. Now will you help me?" Tyler stood to leave. "I want you to understand something. Bradford, when grandmother activated Protocol 7, she didn't just remove you from the family business, she removed you from the family, Legally, morally, permanently. You can't mean that. Yesterday, our father signed documents formally disowning you. He'll be testifying for the prosecution about your pattern of entitlement and disrespect for family values. Bradford's face went white. Robert Harrison, their 70-year-old father, had been conspicuously absent from Bradford's legal proceedings. Tyler's revelation explained why. Dad is testifying against me. Dad spent 50 years building this family's reputation. You destroyed it in 6 months for an affair and some stolen money. Tyler moved toward the door. He's not protecting you anymore. Tyler, please. We're brothers. Family means something. You can't abandon me like this. Tyler paused at the door and turned back one final time. Family means protecting each other. Bradford, you forgot what that means when you threatened a pregnant woman. After Tyler left, Bradford sat alone in the conference room, finally grasping the magnitude of his isolation. His wife had divorced him and taken full custody of their daughter. His mistress was testifying against him. His family had disowned him. His business empire was gone. The trial resumed with devastating testimony from Madison Wells. Wearing a conservative blue dress and speaking in a voice barely above a whisper, she detailed Bradford's instructions to steal proprietary code and sell it to competitors. He told me it was normal business practice, Madison testified. He said all tech companies engaged in industrial espionage, and I was just leveling the playing field. The prosecution played recordings of Bradford's voice giving explicit instructions for theft and fraud. The jury listened with obvious disgust as Bradford laughed about forcing his pregnant wife to work as his mistress's assistant. He said watching Claire serve me coffee was the perfect humiliation, Madison continued. He wanted her to understand her new place in his life before he divorced her. Bradford's defense attorney, Marcus Webb, attempted to portray Bradford as a victim of Madison's manipulation, but the recordings made that narrative impossible to sustain. When Robert Harrison took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. At 70, he retained the commanding presence that had built Harrison Industries from a garage startup to a tech empire. Bradford is my son, Robert testified, his voice heavy with grief. But he is not the man his mother and I raised. The behavior documented in this trial represents a fundamental betrayal of every value our family holds sacred. The prosecution asked Robert to describe Bradford's pattern of entitlement and disrespect for family authority. Bradford always believed the rules didn't apply to him. He thought his last name entitled him to success without effort, respect without earning it, loyalty without reciprocating it. Robert's voice cracked slightly. When he threatened his pregnant wife, he crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. In the gallery, Dorothy Harrison watched her son testify against her grandson with stoic dignity. The destruction of her family brought her no satisfaction, but justice required sacrifices. Claire Harrison sat in the witness section, holding baby Emma and preparing for her own testimony. The past 3 months had transformed her from victim to advocate. The Claire Harrison Foundation for Workplace Equity had already helped dozens of pregnant women facing employment discrimination. When Claire took the stand, the courtroom was completely silent. She spoke clearly and calmly about Bradford's systematic campaign to humiliate and control her. He didn't just want to divorce me, Claire testified. He wanted to destroy my dignity first. He wanted me to understand that I had no power, no options, no hope of fighting back. The prosecution asked Claire to describe the moment her water broke in Madison's office. I was hanging up expensive dresses that Madison would wear to dinner with my husband. I was 8.5 months pregnant, carrying heavy shopping bags, taking care of personal errands for the woman sleeping with my husband. Claire's voice remained steady. When my water broke, Madison's first concern was about carpet stains. The jury's reaction was visible and unanimous. Several jurors wiped away tears. Bradford's defense attorney attempted to suggest that Claire could have quit her job at any time. With what money? Claire responded. With what health insurance? My husband controlled everything. I had no income, no assets, no support system except the health insurance that covered my high-risk pregnancy. But you chose to accept the assistant position rather than sign divorce papers? I chose to protect my unborn daughter. That's what mothers do. Claire's testimony lasted 2 days and sealed Bradford's fate. The recordings were damning, but her first-hand account of systematic abuse resonated with the jury on a human level that transcended legal technicalities. During closing arguments, The prosecution summarized Bradford's crimes with devastating efficiency. Bradford Harrison didn't just steal money, he stole dignity. He didn't just commit corporate espionage. He weaponized pregnancy against his own wife. He used his position of power to inflict maximum humiliation on the woman carrying his child. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Bradford Harrison was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 8 years. Madison Wells received 5 years and agreed to pay full restitution to CloudSync and its competitors. As Bradford was led away in shackles, he looked back at Tyler one final time. Tyler stared straight ahead, showing no emotion. The Harrison family had chosen justice over blood loyalty, and Bradford had learned too late that real power came from protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. Outside the courthouse, Dorothy Harrison held baby Emma while Claire spoke to reporters. "No woman should have to choose between her dignity and her child's safety," Claire said. "The Claire Harrison Foundation will ensure they never have to." The trial was over, but the work of rebuilding trust and protecting vulnerable employees was just beginning. 2 years after Bradford Harrison's conviction, the federal courthouse in San Francisco hosted a very different kind of gathering. The Claire Harrison Foundation for Workplace Equity was announcing the results of their groundbreaking study on pregnancy discrimination in corporate America, and the findings were reshaping employment law across the nation. Claire Harrison stood at the podium in the courthouse's main auditorium, holding 2-year-old Emma on her hip while addressing an audience of employment lawyers, federal legislators, and corporate executives. The woman who had once been forced to fetch coffee for her husband's mistress was now one of the most powerful advocates for workplace equity in American history. "Today, we release findings from the largest study ever conducted on pregnancy discrimination in the workplace," Claire announced. Over 12,000 working mothers participated, representing every industry and income level across all 50 states. The statistics were staggering. 43% of pregnant women reported experiencing workplace harassment or discrimination. 27% lost jobs or income due to pregnancy-related retaliation. 15% were forced into humiliating roles specifically designed to pressure them into quitting. These numbers represent real women, real families, real children whose futures were threatened by employers who viewed pregnancy as a weakness to exploit rather than a natural life event to support. In the audience, Dorothy Harrison watched her great-granddaughter babble happily while her mother delivered remarks that would influence federal legislation. At 70, Dorothy had seen many battles for workplace equality, but Claire's transformation from victim to advocate represented something unprecedented. Tyler Harrison sat beside his grandmother, leading the standing ovation as Claire concluded her remarks. Under his leadership, Harrison Dynamics had become the most family-friendly tech company in Silicon Valley, with the lowest employee turnover and highest satisfaction ratings in the industry. "Treating employees with dignity isn't just morally right," Tyler had explained in countless interviews. "It's profitable. Our productivity and innovation increased dramatically when we prioritized employee well-being over exploitation." The former CloudSync building had been completely transformed. What had once housed Bradford's toxic corporate culture now served as the headquarters for the Claire Harrison Foundation, complete with an on-site daycare center, lactation rooms, and family support services. Madison Wells was conspicuously absent from the proceedings. After serving 3 years in federal prison, she had been released early for cooperation, but remained unemployable in any professional capacity. She currently worked as a barista in Portland under an assumed name, her Silicon Valley career permanently destroyed. Bradford Harrison remained in federal prison, serving year 4 of his 15-year sentence. His request for early release had been denied repeatedly, and his appeals had been exhausted. Former friends and colleagues had forgotten him entirely. In his cell at FCI Dublin, Bradford spent his days working in the prison library and writing letters that were never answered. His parents had cut off all contact. Tyler never visited. Dorothy had made it clear that he was no longer considered family. His most frequent letters were addressed to Claire, apologizing for his behavior and begging for forgiveness. Claire never opened them. Her assistant at the foundation simply forwarded them to federal officials monitoring Bradford's correspondence. "Some people believe forgiveness is required for healing," Claire had explained to a reporter. "But healing doesn't require maintaining relationships with people who cause the trauma. Emma will grow up knowing her father exists, but she won't be burdened by his toxicity." The Claire Harrison Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began as Dorothy's Family Justice Project had evolved into a national organization with chapters in 43 states. Their legal advocacy had resulted in enhanced federal protections for pregnant workers, stricter enforcement of discrimination laws, and corporate policy changes that benefited millions of working mothers. Shane Mitchell, the journalist whose original reporting had exposed the CloudSync scandal, published a book about the case titled Dignity at Work: How One Woman's Courage Changed Corporate America. The book became a bestseller, with all proceeds donated to the Claire Harrison Foundation. Claire Harrison didn't choose to become a symbol, Shane wrote in the book's conclusion, but her refusal to accept humiliation as the price of protecting her child sparked a national conversation about power, vulnerability, and the basic human dignity that every worker deserves. Walter Thompson continued serving as the Harrison family's attorney, but his role had evolved significantly. Instead of managing corporate raids and hostile takeovers, he now specialized in employment law and worker protection advocacy. Dorothy Harrison spent 50 years building a business empire, Walter reflected, but her greatest achievement may be the way she chose family values over family loyalty when those two concepts came into conflict. As the Foundation's second anniversary event concluded, Claire walked through the transformed CloudSync building with Emma, pointing out the daycare center, the comfortable nursing rooms, and the employee wellness center. "This is where Mommy used to work when you were in my tummy," Claire explained to Emma, who responded by clapping enthusiastically. They stopped at the conference room where Bradford had first presented Claire with divorce papers and the ultimatum that started her nightmare. The room had been converted into a children's playroom, filled with toys, books, and bright colors. "Sometimes bad things happen to good people," Claire continued, settling Emma on the soft carpet to play with building blocks. "But sometimes those bad things lead to really good changes for lots of other people." Emma stacked blocks with determined concentration, building towers that occasionally toppled but were always rebuilt. Claire watched her daughter play and reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The marriage to Bradford was completely erased, no contact, no financial dependence, no emotional connection. Claire had built a new life based on her own strength, supported by chosen family members like Dorothy, Tyler, and Nancy. The financial settlement from Bradford's criminal assets had provided security for Emma's future. But Claire's work with the foundation provided purpose and meaning that money couldn't buy. Dorothy Harrison appeared in the playroom doorway, moving carefully with the assistance of a walking cane, but still radiating the authority that had commanded respect for 7 decades. "How are my girls?" Dorothy asked, settling into a comfortable chair to watch Emma play. "We're perfect," Claire replied. "Emma, say hello to Great-Grandma Dorothy." Emma looked up from her blocks and clapped her hands, which Dorothy interpreted as enthusiastic greeting. "I have something for you," Dorothy said, producing a legal document from her purse. "The final paperwork establishing Emma's trust fund. She'll have access to educational funding immediately and full control at 25. Claire examined the documents with amazement. The trust fund contained assets worth over $5 million, ensuring Emma would never face the financial vulnerability that had trapped Claire during her pregnancy. "Dorothy, this is too much. I can't accept." "You're not accepting it. Emma is inheriting it. As my great-granddaughter and a Harrison family member, she deserves financial security." Dorothy's voice softened. "Besides, Bradford's criminal assets were seized and redistributed. This money came from his theft. It belongs to his daughter." Emma abandoned her blocks and crawled toward Dorothy, pulling herself up on the older woman's legs. Dorothy lifted her great-granddaughter with practiced ease, despite her 70 years. "You know," Dorothy said, studying Emma's determined expression, "she has the Harrison stubborn streak. That's going to serve her well in life." Claire smiled. "I hope she never needs the kind of stubborn strength I had to develop." "She won't. That's the point of everything we've built here." Dorothy gestured around the transformed building. "Emma will grow up in a world where pregnant women aren't vulnerable to exploitation, where workplace harassment has real consequences, where family values mean protecting the vulnerable rather than enabling predators." As the afternoon sun streamed through the playroom windows, 3 generations of women sat together: Dorothy, who had built an empire through sheer determination; Claire, who had found her voice through surviving betrayal; and Emma, who would inherit a world made safer by their courage. The story that began with a pregnant woman being forced to serve coffee to her husband's mistress had transformed into a movement that protected millions of working mothers across America. Outside the foundation building, life continued at the normal pace of San Francisco business. Tech companies implemented family-friendly policies that had become industry standards. Federal agencies enforced enhanced pregnancy protection laws. Corporate boards appointed more women to leadership positions. Understanding that diversity wasn't just morally correct, it was economically advantageous. Bradford Harrison remained in federal prison, forgotten by the industry he had once dominated. His legacy was now defined entirely by the cruelty he had inflicted and the justice system's response to corporate abuse. Madison Wells continued working in Portland coffee shops, her Silicon Valley dreams permanently destroyed by her participation in Bradford's scheme. She had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing personal advancement over basic human decency. But Claire Harrison had become something far more powerful, a symbol of transformation, resilience, and the possibility that even the most devastating betrayals could be overcome through courage, community support, and unwavering commitment to protecting others from similar harm. 4 years after the Cloud Sync scandal, Claire Harrison stood in the same conference room where Bradford had first humiliated her. But everything about the space had changed. The sterile corporate atmosphere had been replaced with warm colors, comfortable furniture, and photographs of the hundreds of women the Claire Harrison Foundation had helped protect from workplace discrimination. Emma, now 4 years old with her mother's determined chin and her great-grandmother's sharp intelligence, played quietly in the corner with blocks while Claire interviewed Maria Santos, a pregnant software engineer who had been demoted after requesting maternity leave. "They told me my position was being restructured for efficiency," Maria explained, her hands protectively covering her 6-month pregnant belly. "But they hired my replacement before I even went on leave." Claire took detailed notes, her experience having taught her to recognize the subtle patterns of pregnancy discrimination that companies use to avoid legal liability. "Maria, what you're describing is textbook retaliation. We'll connect you with our legal team immediately, and I'll personally ensure your case receives priority attention." Through the conference room's glass walls, Claire could see the foundation's bustling activity. 23 full-time employees worked with pregnant women facing employment discrimination across the country. Their legal advocacy division had won over 400 cases in 4 years, establishing precedents that protected working mothers nationwide. The foundation's success had exceeded everyone's expectations, including Dorothy's. What began as family justice had evolved into a national movement that changed corporate culture throughout American business. Dorothy Harrison, now 72 and moving more slowly, but still sharp as tempered steel, arrived for their weekly planning meeting accompanied by Walter Thompson and Tyler Harrison. The Harrison family's commitment to the foundation remained absolute. "Claire, dear, how was the congressional hearing?" Dorothy asked, settling into her favorite chair near the window. "Productive. Representative Chen's pregnancy protection bill passed committee unanimously. It should reach the House floor next month." Tyler leaned forward with interest. "What are the key provisions? Enhanced penalties for pregnancy discrimination, mandatory family leave policies for companies with more than 50 employees, and federal funding for workplace lactation support?" Claire consulted her notes. "Most importantly, it creates a federal right to legal representation for pregnant women facing employment retaliation." Emma looked up from her blocks and ran to Dorothy, who lifted her great-granddaughter despite her advancing age. "Great-grandma, will you read to me?" "Of course, her sweetheart. Which book would you like?" Emma chose a picture book about a little girl who became a scientist, and Dorothy began reading with the same attention she had once devoted to board meetings and corporate strategy sessions. Walter Thompson spread financial documents across the conference table. "The Foundation's endowment has grown to $47 million. We can sustain current operations indefinitely and expand into international advocacy if desired." Claire studied the numbers with amazement. The foundation that had started with assets seized from Bradford's criminal enterprise now commanded resources that rivaled major nonprofits. "What about international expansion?" "We've received inquiries from women's rights organizations in 12 countries. Pregnancy discrimination is a global problem that could benefit from our legal advocacy model." As the meeting continued, Shane Mitchell arrived for his quarterly check-in. His book about the Cloud Sync scandal had led to a documentary, a television series, and a permanent role as the Foundation's communications director. Claire, I have updates on the media strategy for the congressional hearings. We've confirmed interviews with CNN, MSNBC, and 60 Minutes. The Washington Post wants to do a feature story about Emma growing up in the Foundation. Claire hesitated. She had carefully protected Emma's privacy, sharing only general information about her daughter's well-being. I'm not comfortable making Emma the focus of media attention. She didn't choose to be part of this story. Dorothy looked up from Emma's book. Wise decision. Public attention should focus on the work, not the family. Tyler nodded in agreement. Harrison Dynamics' success came from prioritizing substance over publicity. The Foundation should follow the same principle. Emma, oblivious to the discussion about her privacy, continued building elaborate block structures while Dorothy provided architectural commentary. Emma, you're quite the engineer. Perhaps you'll follow in the family tradition of building things? I want to help people like Mommy does, Emma announced with 4-year-old certainty. Claire felt her heart swell with pride and concern. Emma was growing up surrounded by the Foundation's mission, understanding from an early age that some adults hurt others and that strong people had responsibility to protect the vulnerable. Nancy Foster arrived for lunch, carrying takeout from the Vietnamese restaurant that had become the Foundation's unofficial cafeteria. As Claire's best friend and the Foundation's program director, Nancy had witnessed Claire's complete transformation from broken victim to powerful advocate. How are you feeling about the anniversary? Nancy asked as they arranged food around the conference table. In 2 weeks, the Foundation would mark the 5th anniversary of Bradford's arrest and Claire's transformation from victim to advocate. The anniversary always brought mixed emotions, pride in accomplishments, grief for trauma endured, and determination to continue protecting other women. Reflective, I suppose. Sometimes I can't believe how much has changed. Walter Thompson consulted his calendar. Speaking of anniversaries, Bradford's parole hearing is scheduled for next month. The room fell silent. Bradford had served 6 years of his 15-year sentence and was eligible for parole consideration, though legal experts considered his release unlikely. Has he requested contact with Emma? Tyler asked. Through his attorney, yes. He wants visitation rights and involvement in her upbringing. Walter's expression showed his opinion of Bradford's request. Claire has absolute discretion to refuse, and I recommend she exercise that discretion. Claire watched Emma playing peacefully, building a tower that reached almost to her shoulder. Bradford had never shown interest in his daughter beyond using her as leverage against Claire. He had no relationship with Emma, no understanding of her personality, no involvement in her daily life. Emma doesn't know him, and I see no benefit in changing that. He chose to threaten her mother during pregnancy. That choice has permanent consequences. Dorothy nodded approvingly. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Bradford made his choices. Now he lives with the results. The Foundation's afternoon activities continued with the comfortable rhythm that had developed over 4 years. Legal advocates prepared cases. Counselors met with pregnant women facing discrimination. Administrative staff coordinated with congressional offices on federal legislation. Claire walked through the building, checking on various programs and marveling at what had grown from her personal nightmare. The Foundation employed 43 people, operated offices in 6 states, and had helped over 2,000 women protect their rights during pregnancy. In the evening, Claire and Emma returned to their apartment in Pacific Heights, a comfortable 2-bedroom space that prioritized safety and proximity to the Foundation. Emma's bedroom was filled with books, art supplies, and educational toys that reflected her growing curiosity about the world. As Claire tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked the question she posed every few weeks. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy like other kids? Claire had prepared for this conversation since Emma learned to speak, consulting child psychologists about age-appropriate explanations for difficult family circumstances. Some families have mommies and daddies. Some have just mommies. Some have just daddies. And some have grandparents or other special adults. Our family has Mommy, great-grandma Dorothy, Uncle Tyler, and lots of people at the Foundation who love you very much. But why don't I have a daddy? Your daddy made some very bad choices before you were born. He hurt people and had to go away. Mommy decided it was safer and happier for us to have our own special family. Emma considered this explanation with four-year-old seriousness. Will he ever come back? Not to our family, but if you ever want to know more about him when you're older, we can talk about it. I like our family the way it is. Claire kissed Emma's forehead and turned off the bedroom light, leaving the door slightly open as Emma preferred. In her own bedroom, Claire reviewed foundation documents and congressional testimony, preparing for the next day's activities. Her work required constant focus on legal details, financial planning, and political strategy. But tonight, she allowed herself to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 5 years ago, she had been trapped in an abusive marriage, forced to serve coffee to her husband's mistress while 8 months pregnant. She had felt powerless, isolated, and terrified for her unborn daughter's future. Tonight, she was one of the most influential workplace advocates in American history, commanding resources that protected thousands of women, raising a confident daughter who understood her own worth, and building a legacy that would outlast any individual career or personal achievement. The woman who had been humiliated on Madison Wells' carpet had become the architect of federal legislation protecting pregnant workers nationwide. Bradford Harrison remained in federal prison, forgotten by the industry he had once dominated, abandoned by the family he had betrayed, irrelevant to the daughter whose future he had threatened. But Claire Harrison had built something permanent and powerful from the wreckage of her marriage. The foundation would continue its work long after she retired, protecting generations of women from the vulnerabilities she had experienced. As Claire fell asleep in her comfortable apartment, Emma breathing peacefully in the next room, she reflected on the wisdom Dorothy had shared years earlier. Real power wasn't about having money or titles. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone convince you otherwise. The story that began with a pregnant woman's ultimate humiliation had become the foundation for protecting millions of women from similar exploitation. Bradford Harrison had destroyed his own legacy through cruelty and greed. Claire Harrison had built hers through courage, compassion, and unwavering commitment to ensuring that no other woman would face what she had endured. The little girl sleeping peacefully in the next room would grow up in a world made safer by her mother's strength, supported by a chosen family that prioritized protection over exploitation, and equipped with resources that would prevent her from ever experiencing the vulnerability that had nearly destroyed her mother. Emma Harrison would inherit not just Dorothy's trust fund, but something far more valuable: a world where pregnancy was protected, where workplace harassment had consequences, and where powerful families chose justice over loyalty when the two concepts came into conflict. The circle was complete. The conference room where Claire had once been threatened with divorce papers now served as headquarters for an organization that had transformed American workplace culture. From ultimate humiliation to ultimate empowerment, the pregnant woman who refused to accept degradation had become the most powerful voice for workplace dignity in the nation. Bradford Harrison had learned too late that threatening a pregnant woman had consequences that reached far beyond his imagination. Claire Harrison had proven that the strongest revenge was building a better world for everyone who came after.